The shuttle shook as it entered the thin atmosphere of 4. Park gripped the handle above her seat and watched the frost moon grow larger through the small window. White ice covered everything below. Mountains of frozen rock stretched across the surface like broken teeth. She had seen the images from the satellite scan. She knew what waited for them down there, but knowing something and seeing it were two very different things. 2 minutes to landing, the pilot announced through the speaker. Checked her gear one more time. Thermal suit sealed, medical kit on her belt, scanner ready. She had done this work for 8 years now. Rescue operations, recovery missions. Sometimes she found survivors. Sometimes she found only bodies. The hard truth was that the bodies were more common. The shuttle touched down on a flat stretch of ice near what used to be a village, stood and moved toward the rear hatch with the rest of her team. There were 4 of them in total, enough to search the area, not enough to fight if trouble found them. The hatch opened and cold air rushed inside. Even through her thermal suit, felt the bite of it against her face. She stepped out onto the frozen ground and looked at the ruins before her. The colony had been small, maybe 200 individuals at most. They were a peaceful species. Soft fur covered their bodies. They walked on 4 legs and had large ears that could hear sounds from great distances. The Galactic Union had placed them under protection because they had not yet developed space travel. They were supposed to be safe. They had not been safe. Walked through the remains of the settlement. Buildings had been burned, walls had collapsed, dark marks on the ice showed where energy weapons had fired. She saw bodies, some were adults, some were not. She made herself look at each one. She owed them that much at least. One of her teammates, a young man named, called to her from across the open ground. "I found something." She walked over to him. He stood near a structure that had partially fallen. Half of the roof had caved in, but one corner still held together, pointed at the rubble. "I heard a sound," he said, "something moving under there." Knelt down and pressed her ear against the broken wall. At first she heard nothing. Then very faint she heard breathing, quick and shallow. Something alive was trapped inside. "Help me move this," she said. They worked together, pulling away pieces of frozen metal and stone. The cold made their fingers stiff even through their gloves, did not stop. She had heard that breathing. She was not going to leave whatever made it behind. After several minutes, they cleared enough rubble to see inside the collapsed space, shined her light into the darkness. The 2 shapes lay on the floor. One was an adult female. Her body was still. Her eyes were closed. Frost had begun to form on her fur. She had been dead for some time. Curled against the dead female was a small shape, a cub, very young, maybe 4 cycles old, which would be like a 6-year-old human child. The cub was alive, barely. Her fur was thin and patchy from hunger. Her body shook from the cold, but when the light touched her face, her eyes opened. Golden eyes stared up at. The cub did not move away from her mother's body. She pressed closer to it and made a low sound in her throat, a warning. "It's okay," said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub hissed. It was a weak sound. She did not have enough strength for more. Looked at the dead mother. She looked at the small body pressed against her. The cub had stayed here for days, waiting, hopping. She had not left her mother even as the cold crept in and food ran out. Removed her thermal gloves, made a surprised noise behind her. Bare skin would freeze quickly in this temperature, but knew what she was doing. She lowered herself to the ground and lay flat on her stomach. She extended her bare hand toward the cub, palm open, fingers relaxed. She did not reach for the cub. She simply offered. "I know you're scared," said. Her voice was calm and low. "I know you don't understand what happened. I know you miss her." The cub's ears twitched. She was listening. "I can't bring her back," continued. "I wish I could, but I can take you somewhere warm, somewhere safe. Will you let me do that?" For a long moment, nothing happened. The cub stared at its hand. The gold in her eyes seemed to flicker with some internal struggle. Trust was hard. Trust after what she had seen was nearly impossible. Then slowly the cub leaned forward. Her small nose touched its palm, cold and wet, did not move. She let the cub smell her skin, learn her scent, decide if she was safe. The cub made a different sound now, not a warning, something softer, sadder. "That's right," whispered, "I've got you." She carefully lifted the cub from the ground. The small body weighed almost nothing, could feel every bone through the thin fur. The cub did not fight. She seemed to have no fight left in her. She simply tucked her head against its chest and closed her eyes. Helped to her feet, he looked at the cub with something between pity and wonder. "Well, she's in bad shape," he said. "She's alive," replied. "That's enough for now." They made their way back to the shuttle. The other team members had finished their search. They had found no other survivors, just this one small life in all that death. I climbed into the shuttle and sat down with the cub still pressed against her. The pilot started the engines. The craft lifted off from the frozen ground and rose toward the waiting ship above. The cub's breathing had slowed. She was falling asleep. For the first time in days, she felt warm. For the first time since the attack, she was not alone. Looked down at the small face resting against her suit. She did not know this cub's name. She did not know what would happen to her. She only knew that right now, in this moment, she would keep her safe. The shuttle docked with the GSS Horizon. Medical teams were waiting. They took the cub from his arms and rushed her toward the medical bay, watched them go. She felt strangely empty without that small weight against her chest. Captain Shin met her in the corridor. "Report," he said. "No survivors except the cub," told him. "The settlement was hit hard, professional work, military-grade weapons." His face darkened. "The mining corporation." "Most likely." He was quiet for a moment, then he looked toward the medical bay. "What's the cub's status?" "Unknown. She's young and weak, but she held on this long." Paused. "She's a fighter." Nodded slowly. "Get some rest. We'll debrief in 2 hours." Walked toward her quarters, but she did not rest. Instead, she sat on the edge of her bunk and stared at the wall. She thought about the ruins, the bodies, the cub curled against her dead mother in the frozen dark. She thought about golden eyes looking up at her with fear and pain, and the smallest spark of hope. And she made a decision. She would not let that spark go out. The medical bay had a special room for alien patients. It was sealed behind thick glass to prevent any spread of disease between species. Inside, the temperature and air were adjusted to match whatever the patient needed. Right now, it was set warm, very warm, almost too warm for humans. The cub lay on a soft bed in the center of the room. Medical tubes connected to her small body gave her water and nutrients. A monitor showed her heartbeat. It was steady now, stronger than before. The doctors said she would survive. But surviving and living were not the same thing. Stood outside the glass on the first day, she watched the cub through the transparent wall. The small creature did not move. She lay with her eyes open, staring at the door, waiting for what was not sure, perhaps for her mother to walk through, perhaps for something else. "She won't eat," said Lay, the ship's medical officer. He stood beside with a tablet in his hands. "We've tried different foods, foods that cubs normally love. She won't touch any of them." "Well, has she slept?" "Very little, a few minutes here and there. Then she wakes up suddenly, like she's afraid." Pressed her hand against the glass. The cub's ears moved slightly at the sound. Those golden eyes shifted from the door to where stood. For a moment they looked at each other. Then the cub turned away. "She remembers you," said, "from the rescue." "Or maybe. You could try talking to her through the speaker system." Considered this, the quarantine had to stay in place for at least a week. Standard procedure. No physical contact until tests confirmed it was safe, but sound could travel through. She found the speaker button on the wall. She pressed it. "Hello," she said softly. "Do you remember me?" The cub's ears stood straight up. She did not move her body, but her attention was fully on now. "I'm going to come here every day," continued. "I'm going to talk to you. You don't have to talk back. You don't have to do anything. I just want you to know that you're not alone." The cub blinked once. Then she lowered her head onto her paws and closed her eyes. Kept her promise. Every day during her off-duty hours, she came to the medical bay. She sat in a chair outside the glass and talked through the speaker. She told the cub about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about cities full of lights and mountains covered in snow. She told her about her own childhood, about the small house where she grew up, about her mother's cooking and her father's bad jokes, about the dog she had when she was young, a small brown dog named who used to sleep on her chest every night. "He was warm," said one evening, "and heavy. Sometimes I couldn't breathe, but I never pushed him off. I liked having him there. It made me feel safe." The cub was watching her now, really watching, not just glancing and turning away. Her ears were forward, pointed toward the speaker, catching every word. "I miss him sometimes," admitted. "He died a long time ago, but I still think about him." On the fourth day, something changed. Arrived at her usual time. She sat in her chair and looked through the glass. The cub was sitting up on her bed. In front of her was a bowl of food, the same food that had gone untouched for days. As watched, the cub looked at her. Then slowly she lowered her head and began to eat. Felt something tighten in her chest. She did not speak. She just sat there, quiet, while the cub finished her meal. When the bowl was empty, the cub lay down and closed her eyes. This time she slept, really slept. Her breathing became slow and deep. Her small body relaxed into the soft bed. Stayed until the end of her shift. She did not want to leave, but she had duties. The ship needed her. So she came back the next day, and the next, and the next. The quarantine ended after 7 days. All tests came back clear. The cub could leave the sealed room. She could have normal contact with others. Opened the door to the quarantine chamber. The The cub stood on her bed, tense and uncertain. Her eyes moved around the room, looking at all the new faces. The doctors, the nurses, so many strangers. Then her eyes found. Without warning, the cub jumped from the bed. She ran across the floor on her four small legs. She ran straight to and climbed up her body like it was the most natural thing in the world. Up her legs, up her torso, until she could press her face against its neck. I caught her, held her, felt the rapid beating of a tiny heart against her own. "Okay," she whispered, "okay, I've got you." The cub made a sound, a soft noise from deep in her throat. Not a warning this time, something else, something like a word. Or the cub said. Everyone in the room went still. Did she just started? And the cub said again. Her voice was small and rough, like she was trying to use muscles she had never used before. Cubs learned languages faster than adults. Their minds were flexible, open, but this was still remarkable, just from listening through the glass, just from those hours of one-sided conversation. Pulled back slightly so she could see the cub's face. Those golden eyes looked up at her with something new, not just fear or sadness, something warmer. "That's right," said I'm. "What's your name?" The cub was quiet for a moment. Then she made a different sound, a word in her own language. It sounded like wind through grass, like water over stones. Well, the cub said, "I am." From that day on, did not want to be apart from. She slept in quarters, curled on a special bed that the engineers built for her. She followed through the ship's corridors, her small paws clicking on the metal floor. She sat beside during meals, eating her own food from a bowl while ate from a plate. The crew found it strange at first, amusing. A few made jokes about having a shadow, but grew on them. She learned more words. She learned names. She would greet people in the hallways with a small wave of her paw and a carefully pronounced hello. Pulled aside one evening. "You need to be careful," he said. His voice was kind but serious. "And careful of what?" Getting too attached, he looked toward who was playing with a ball of string nearby. "She's going to be transferred to a sanctuary when we reach Union Central. That's where orphaned cubs go. That's where she belongs." Did not answer right away. She watched chase the string ball across the floor. The cub's ears were up. Her tail was wagging. She looked happy. For the first time since the rescue, she looked like a child should look. "I know," said finally. "I know she's not mine to keep." But that night, when climbed into her bunk and pressed her small body against his chest, exactly like used to do, realized something. She was already attached. She had been since the moment that cold nose touched her palm in the ruins. "Made a sleepy sound. Stay?" she asked. It was her favorite word now. She said it often. "Stay for food, stay for stories, stay with me." "I'll stay," whispered. She did not know how to tell that someday she might not be able to. She did not know how to explain that the galaxy had rules about these things. That was human and their paths were only crossing for a little while. So she said nothing. She just held the cub close and watched the stars drift past the window. And she wished, not for the first time, that wishing could make things true. 3 weeks passed on the horizon, 3 weeks of quiet routine, 3 weeks of meals together, stories before sleep, and small paws following everywhere, for it began to feel normal, like this was how life had always been, like had always been there. The cub was learning fast. Her human words grew clearer each day. She could say simple sentences now. She could ask questions. She could tell when she was hungry or tired or scared. Sometimes she would wake from bad dreams, crying for her mother in her own language, would hold her then, rock her gently, whisper calm things until the shaking stopped. It was not easy. Grief does not go away quickly, even for the very young. But slowly, day by day, the dark moments became fewer. The bright moments became more. Discovered that she loved the observation deck. The large window there showed the stars in all their glory. She would press her nose against the glass and stare at the lights for hours. So many, she said one evening, so many stars. Yes, agreed. She sat beside on the floor, more than anyone can count. Where is home? Asked. Where is my home star? Was quiet for a moment. She knew where 4 was on the star maps. She could point to it, but she was not sure if she should. Do you want me to show you? Thought about this. Her ears moved back and forth, the way they did when she was thinking hard. No, she said finally, not yet. Put her arm around the small body. Okay, when you're ready. That night, Captain called to his office. His face was grim when she entered, the kind of grim that meant bad news. We received a signal, he said, another colony, 7, in the jungle moon system. Felt her stomach tighten, the same corporation. We believe so. The colony went silent 8 days ago. Union Command wants us to investigate. Paused. He looked at directly. You're my best rescue operative. I need you on this mission. Had known this moment would come. She was good at her job, the best on the ship, as said. When lives needed saving, she was the one they called. But she had not thought about what it would mean now that existed in her life. How dangerous? She asked. Very. Intelligence reports suggest the corporation has armed guards at the site. They're not just attacking colonies anymore. They're occupying them, using them as bases for mining operations. And so we'll face resistance. Almost certainly. Stood still, her mind raced through possibilities, ways to make this work, ways to keep everyone safe. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning early. She nodded slowly. I'll be ready. Studied her face. He was not a fool. He had seen how she was with the cub. Everyone on the ship had seen it. We'll take care of her while you're gone, he said quietly. She'll be safe here. I know. This is what you do. This is who you are. You save people. You can't stop doing that because of one cub. I know, said again, but her voice was hollow. She left the captain's office and walked slowly back to her quarters. Her feet felt heavy. Each step took more effort than it should have. Was waiting for her. The cub sat on his bunk with a picture book in her paws. One of the crew members had given it to her. A children's book from Earth about a little rabbit who went on adventures. I jumped up when the door opened. Read story tonight. Sure, forced a smile. Let me get changed first. She went through the motions of her evening routine, changed her clothes, washed her face, brushed her hair, normal things, ordinary things, all while her mind screamed at her that nothing was normal or ordinary anymore. Finally, she sat on the bunk beside. The cub immediately climbed into her lap and opened the book, read the words out loud, pointing at the pictures, explaining the parts that did not understand. But her heart was not in it. Her heart was already on that jungle moon in those dark forests, facing dangers she could not yet see. When the story was finished, yawned widely. Her small teeth showed, sharp and white. "Sleep now?" she asked. "Yes, sleep now." Helped settle into the soft blankets. She stroked the fur between the cub's ears, the spot that always made relaxed and sleepy. His voice was already thick with drowsiness. "Oh, yes. Tomorrow we go to observation deck." His throat felt tight. "Maybe we'll see." Smiled and closed her eyes. Within moments her breathing slowed. She was asleep. Young things slept so easily, so completely. They did not lie awake worrying about tomorrow. Did not move from the bedside. She watched sleep, the gentle rise and fall of that small chest, the twitch of ears as dreams played behind closed eyes. She had planned to leave before woke up. It seemed easier that way. Kleiner, no difficult goodbyes, no explaining something that a child might not understand. But now, looking at that sleeping face, she was not sure she could do it. Had already lost so much, her home, her family, her whole world, and she had survived by trusting, by believing that would be there. What would it do to her if she woke up and was simply gone? Lay down on the bunk beside the cub. She pulled the blanket over both of them, stirred slightly and moved closer, pressing her warm body against side. "Tomorrow morning early." Stared at the ceiling. She listened to the quiet hum of the ship. She felt heart beat against her ribs. She could tell her in the morning, wake her up gently, explain where she was going and why, promise to come back. But promises were dangerous things, had been in this work long enough to know that. She had made promises before, to colleagues, to survivors, to herself. Some promises she had kept, some she had not. Some had been broken not by choice but by death. What right did she have to promise anything to this small creature who had already seen too much loss? The hours passed, did not sleep. She watched the darkness and thought about all the things she could not control. The signal came at 500, a soft chime from her communication device. Time to go. Moved carefully, trying not to wake. She slipped out of the bunk and reached for her gear. Then she stopped. And she looked back at the sleeping cub, at the peaceful face, at the small paws curled against the pillow. She could not leave without a word. She could not do that to her. Sat back down on the edge of the bunk. She reached out and gently touched his shoulder. She whispered, "Wake up." The cub stirred, her eyes opened slowly, still clouded with sleep. Her voice was confused. "Why wake, still dark?" "I need to tell you something," took a deep breath. "I have to go somewhere today, a place far away. There are people who need help, like you needed help. I have to try to save them." His eyes grew clearer, more awake, more understanding than any child should have to be. "Go away." "For a little while, yes." "Come back." I hesitated, the promise sat on her tongue, heavy, dangerous. "I will try very hard to come back," she said finally. "That's all I can promise, that I will try." Was quiet for a long moment. Her golden eyes studied his face, looking for something, truth maybe, or comfort. Then the cub reached up with one small paw and touched his cheek. "The strong," she said, "come back." It was not a question, it was a statement, a belief. Pulled into her arms and held her tight, than she should have. She felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she did not let them fall. "Stay with," she said into his fur. "Be good, eat your food, sleep when you're tired." "I will. And I'll be back before you know it." She sat down gently. She gathered her gear. She walked to the door. At the threshold, she looked back one more time. Sat in the middle of the bunk, small and alone, but she was not crying. She was watching with those steady golden eyes. "Be safe," the cub said. Nodded once, then she turned and walked out the door. The mission was waiting. She could not be late. But as she made her way to the shuttle bay, she carried something with her, not just her gear, not just her training. She carried the image of golden eyes full of faith, and a small voice saying words that she would not forget. "The strong come back." Sat in the shuttle with the rest of her team. There were 6 of them this time, a larger group for a harder mission. She knew some of them well. Was there again the same young man who had helped her find in the ruins. The others were soldiers and medics, professionals who knew the risks. The shuttle moved fast through empty space. The jungle moon grew larger in the window, green and brown and full of life, different from the frost moon, but hiding the same kind of darkness. "Final check," the team leader called. "Weapons ready, medical kits full. Everyone remember the plan." I closed her eyes and went through the plan in her head. Land 2 kilometers from the colony, move through the jungle on foot, reach the settlement, find survivors, get them out. Simple words for a complicated job. The shuttle landed in a small clearing. The jungle surrounded them on all sides. Tall trees with thick leaves blocked most of the sunlight. Strange sounds came from every direction. Animals and insects that did not exist on Earth. Life that had evolved under a different sun. They moved out in a careful line, slow and quiet, watching for traps, watching for guards. The air was heavy and wet. Sweat ran down his back despite the cooling system in her suit. Hours passed. They found signs of the corporation's presence, tracks from heavy machines, cut trees, broken paths. The mining had already started. The colonizers were not wasting time. Then they found the first body. A guard shot through the chest, left where they fell, knelt beside the body and closed their eyes gently. "We're close," she said. They reached the edge of the colony just before dark. What they saw made blood go cold. The settlement was occupied just as intelligence had warned. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Large machines dug into the earth near the center of town. Bright lights had been set up to allow work through the night. And the who had lived here, they were still alive, most of them, but they were trapped, confined to a small area at the edge of their own village, prisoners in their own home. "We can't fight through that many guards," said quietly. His voice was tight with frustration. "There must be 50 of them." "We don't need to fight them all," replied. "We need to find another way." They spent the night watching, learning the guards' patterns, finding the weak points in their security. when dawn came, had a new plan. There was a drainage tunnel under the village, old and forgotten. It came out near where they were being held. If they could get through the tunnel unseen, they could reach the prisoners directly. "Oh, it's risky," the team leader said. "Everything is risky," answered, "but those people can't wait. Every day they stay here, things get worse." They went in at midnight, 6 people moving through dark water in a narrow space. The tunnel was older than they expected. Parts of it had collapsed. They had to climb over debris and squeeze through gaps that barely fit a human body. But they made it. The exit brought them up inside an empty building near the prisoner area. Crawled out first and looked around carefully. Guards walked the fence line, but there was a gap, a moment every few minutes when no one was watching a particular corner. "On my signal," she whispered. She waited, counted the steps of the guards, measured the time between passes. No. They moved fast and silent, through the gap in the patrol, into the area where they huddled together in fear. The first one to see them was an elderly female. Her fur was with age. Her eyes went wide when she spotted the humans. "Rescue," said quickly, holding up her hands to show she was no threat. "We're here to get you out." Word spread through the group like fire, faces filled with hope. Parents pulled their cubs close, the elderly reached for the young. There were 16 survivors in total, 11 adults, 5 cubs. Getting them all through the tunnel would take time, more time than they had before the guards noticed something was wrong. "Take them," said two. "I'll create a distraction." "That's suicide." "No, it's math. One person can move faster than 17. I lead them one way. You lead everyone else the other way. We meet at the shuttle." Looked at her for a long moment. She could see the argument forming in his eyes, but there was no time for arguments. "Go," she said. He went. The team moved the survivors toward the tunnel, one small group at a time, watched them disappear into the darkness. Then she took a deep breath and stepped out into the light. The shout came quickly, guards running toward her, weapons raised, orders yelled in harsh voices. "Ran." She ran through the village, between buildings, over fences. She knew she could not outrun them forever, but she did not need forever. She only needed enough time for the others to escape. Shots fired behind her, close, too close. She felt something burn across her arm. Pain flared bright and sharp. She kept running. More guards joined the chase. They were everywhere now. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her lungs screamed for rest. Her legs felt like stone. She turned a corner and found herself face to face with a wall. Dead end. She spun around. Guards blocked the way out, 5 of them, weapons aimed at her chest. "Don't move," one of them said. Raised her hands slowly. Her mind raced through options. None of them good, none of them likely to end with her alive. Then the night exploded. Light and sound and chaos. Somewhere nearby, something had detonated. The guards stumbled, looked away, only for a moment. It was enough. Dove to the side, found a narrow gap between buildings, squeezed through, kept moving. Later, she would learn that had set off an emergency flare near the colony's fuel storage, drawing attention, creating confusion, giving her one more chance. She ran through the jungle, no path, no plan, just movement, just survival. She ran until she could not run anymore. Then she walked, then she crawled. Dawn found her at the edge of the landing zone. The shuttle was there. The hatch was open. Stood in the doorway, his face a mask of worry. She collapsed into his arms. Her body had nothing left. Everything hurt. Everything was tired. The survivors, she managed to ask. All aboard, all safe. She smiled then, a real smile, the first since the mission started. I'm good, she whispered. That's good. They lifted her into the shuttle. The medic worked on her wounds. A fractured arm, shrapnel in her side from a near miss she did not even remember. Burns on her hands from climbing hot metal. None of it fatal, all of it painful. The shuttle rose from the jungle moon. Behind them, the corporation's base was in chaos, searching for escaped prisoners, searching for the human who had led them on a chase through the night. Lay on a stretcher and watched the green world fall away. 16 lives saved, 11 adults, 5 cubs. It was enough, it had to be enough. Her eyes began to close, sleep pulled at her, heavy and warm and impossible to resist. The last thing she thought about before darkness took her was not the mission, not the guards, not the pain in her body. She thought about golden eyes, a small voice, a promise she had made. The strong come back. I'm coming, she murmured to no one. Then sleep took her away. The shuttle docked with the horizon in the early morning hours, did not know what time it was. She had slept for most of the journey back. Her body needed the rest. Her wounds needed time to begin healing. When the hatch opened, a medical team was waiting, stood at the front, his face serious. He moved quickly to stretch her and began checking her injuries. Fractured arm, shrapnel wounds, burns on both hands, some internal bruising. He shook his head slowly. You really know how to have a good time. The survivors asked. Her voice was rough from sleep. Already in the medical bay, 16 total, you said, all stable. The cubs are scared but healthy. Nodded. Good, that was good. They wheeled her through the corridors toward the medical bay. The ship felt quiet at this hour. Most of the crew was asleep. The lights were dimmed to match the cycle of day and night. Then she heard it. A sound, distant at first, then growing louder, the rapid clicking of small claws on metal flooring. Wait, said. She tried to sit up on the stretcher. Pain shot through her side, but she ignored it. Stop. Held up his hand. The medical team stopped moving. The clicking sound grew closer, faster now, almost running. Then burst around the corner. The small cub was moving as fast as her 4 legs could carry her. Her ears were pressed flat against her head. Her golden eyes were wide and bright with tears. She had not stopped to put on her little vest. She had not stopped for anything. Why, UNA? Launched herself at the stretcher. She scrambled up onto the blanket, her claws catching in the fabric, and threw herself against its chest. You came back, you came back, you came back. The words poured out in a rush. Between them made sounds that were not words at all. Crying sounds, relief sounds, the sounds of a small heart that had been breaking and was now starting to mend. wrapped her unbroken arm around the cub and held her close, was shaking. Her whole small body trembled against its chest. I told you I would try, whispered into the soft fur. I tried very hard. I waited, his voice was muffled against shoulder. Every day I waited, said you were coming, but I was scared, I was so scared. I know, I'm sorry. You're hurt, pulled back slightly and looked at the bandages, at the medical equipment attached to his body. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. They hurt you. A little bit, but I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. Pressed her face back against his neck. She was not going to let go. Could feel it in the tightness of those small paws, in the desperate grip of a cub who had already lost too much. I cleared his throat. We need to get her to the medical bay, he said gently. She needs treatment. His head came up, her ears went back. For a moment, she looked ready to fight anyone who tried to take away from her. You can come too, said quickly. You can stay with me the whole time, okay? The cub relaxed slightly. She nodded once firmly. They continued to the medical bay, stayed on the stretcher the entire way. She would not be moved. When they lifted onto a proper bed, climbed up beside her and curled into a tight ball against her uninjured side. The doctors worked around her. They set his arm in a cast. They cleaned and sealed the shrapnel wounds. They treated the burns with healing gel. Through all of it, watched. She did not interfere, but she did not leave. When the treatment was finished, pulled up a chair beside the bed. She was difficult while you were gone, he said. He was smiling a little despite his words. Wouldn't eat properly, wouldn't sleep. She sat by the communications station every day waiting for updates. Looked down at the cub pressed against her side. His eyes were closed now. She had fallen asleep, exhausted from worry and relief. I'm sorry I made you take care of her, said. Don't be, she's a good cub, she just missed you. Paused. She loves you, you know that, right? Did not answer, but she knew. The next few days passed slowly, healed. She slept a lot, ate carefully, did the exercises the doctors told her to do, and through all of it was there, a constant presence, a small warm weight always nearby. The rescued from the jungle moon were being processed. The adults were interviewed about what had happened. The cubs were examined by the medical team. Plans were being made to transport them all to a safe settlement. On the fourth day, a representative arrived from the sanctuary, a human woman with kind eyes and a gentle manner. She came to speak with about. We're preparing to receive all the orphaned cubs from both rescue missions, the woman explained. We have foster families ready, who have volunteered to take in children who lost their parents. Listened, her chest felt tight. Would do well with a family, the woman continued. She would learn her culture, her language, her traditions, things that a human couldn't teach her. I know, but I've been watching you too, the woman smiled softly, and I've read the reports. You saved her life. You cared for her when no one else could reach her. She trusts you in a way she may never trust anyone else. I said nothing, she waited. There's a provision in Galactic Union law, the woman said. Statute 7.23c, it allows humans to serve as legal guardians for orphaned members of protected species. If you wanted to apply for guardianship, the sanctuary would not object. His heart skipped a beat. You mean I could keep her? If you want to, and if she wants to stay with you. The woman looked toward the door of the medical bay, where was playing with a ball of string. I think we both know what her answer would be. The woman left, sat with the information for a long time. She thought about everything it would mean. The responsibility, the challenges, a human raising a cub. There would be things she could not give, things she could not teach her. But there would also be love, so much love. That evening called to sit beside her on the bed. I need to ask you something, she said, something important. As ears perked forward, her golden eyes fixed on space. The people from the sanctuary want to take you to live with a family. Other adults who could teach you things I can't, who could help you remember where you came from. As ears began to droop, her small body went tense. But continued, there's another choice. If you want it, you could stay with me. I could be your guardian, your family. It would be official, legal, permanent. The cub was very still. Her breathing had quickened. What do you want? You have to choose. For a moment, neither of them spoke, then moved. She climbed into his lap and pressed her forehead against his cheek, a gesture of trust, of love, of belonging. Stay, she said. I want to stay with you. You are my family now. His eyes burned with tears. She did not try to stop them. She wrapped her arms around the small body and held on like she would never let go. Okay, she whispered. Okay, then that's what we'll do. The captain processed the paperwork himself. He handed it to with something that might have been a smile. Congratulations, he said. You're officially a parent. A week later was released from the medical bay. Her arm was still in a cast. Her side still ached, but she was healing. She walked to her quarters with Trotting beside her. Their quarters now. The room had been adjusted. A proper bed for, shelves for her things, space for two instead of one. That night lay in her bunk and looked out at the stars, climbed up and settled on her chest exactly like used to do so many years ago, small and warm and heavy. Oh, the cub murmured sleepily. Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. I stroked the soft fur between his ears. For what? For coming back, for keeping me. Smiled into the darkness. Thank you for waiting for me. Made a happy sound and closed her eyes. Within moments, she was asleep. The door opened slightly, stood in the hallway looking in. Humans, he said, shaking his head, you people get attached to everything. Did not open her eyes, but her smile grew wider. Yeah, she said softly, we do. Outside the window, stars drifted by in endless silence. The ship moved through the dark between worlds, and in a small room 2 hearts beat together, human and rescuer and rescued. Family.